Hey, it's Shaggy, a little after 5 o'clock, and time to get into our show for today. If you are just now joining us, welcome to 88.5 FM KAKU and Channel 55 as we get ready to go live. Today, I have a very interesting guest who is, well, way more attractive than I am to look at. So we'll get her story in a sec. Right now, though, we start the show the same way. Roll the intro.
Live from beautiful downtown Kahului, on the #1 island destination on planet Earth, the Valley Isle, Maui. From the KAKU studio at Halfway to Hell Plaza, it's live! And now, a man that's known far, but not wide. It's Shaggy!
To the show for today, my guest joining me from, I guess we can call you now officially an upcountry woman.
Yes.
It is the Director of Women Helping Women, Stacy Moniz.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You know, the funny thing is like I've always wanted to look at your last name and call you Stacy Moniz.
Oh.
Have you ever thought of pursuing a career in perhaps like R&B or hip-hop?
No.
Oh.
Some people are meant to sing and some people are meant to listen. I'm really meant to listen. I am not a good singer. I love to sing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. But it's best done in private.
Oh, well, today was a kind of a singing day for you. Did you do any singing? I know it's your grandson.
I definitely did sing some happy birthday to my grandson, Laakea, who's 2 today. He's 2.
He's getting
Happy
big.
Birthday. He's so big.
Oh
my God.
Well, I mean, he is your first grandchild, so
Yes.
I take it there is a certain amount of pride when you're just like, it's the second birthday.
Oh my God, I'm kind of crazy. I'm a crazy grandma. I am.
Really?
Yes.
Have you started the crazy grandmother trait of annoying your kids for yet another grandbaby?
No, because one's good right now. He's a handful. Even before he got to 2, he's like a double handful. So we're good. We're good for now, but it'll probably come. You know, and some people are asking, he's turning 2. When's the next one coming? And no, it's not really coming.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The funny thing is like I know your kids, right?
Yeah.
So and I get it for all the time where
Sure.
it's just like, oh God, man, please.
Are they
not another
asking you
grandkids.
yet?
No, actually,
you got
yes.
married. Of course they're asking. Once
Yeah.
you get married, then everybody wants to know.
Well, I think it's because your daughter Haley is like real good friends with my wife
Sure.
Kamiley.
Yeah.
I think at this point she's just looking at Kamiley like, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Join the club. Join us. We can have play dates and we can be mom friends together now. It's the next level.
Well, see, it's like you're so like warm and cuddly. I can't imagine like not bringing my kids to you as a babysitter. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take you up on this offer soon.
Well, and see, then we'll have the more the merrier. We'll bring them all together and Thursday's my day. Thursdays are my day with my grandson,
So
typically.
I need to go ahead and write that down for my wife. Thursdays, we are
Yes.
free.
Yes.
But besides being a grandmother, I mean, you have a job over at Women Helping Women. You're
I
the
do.
executive director.
I am, and I have been for quite a while now.
Oh, wow. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I wanted to start off the show, even though that I've known you for a number of years now. And some of those years, and I'll get into that in a second, I was bitter.
Because
Oh, no.
We'll get into that.
You'll understand in a sec. But there's a really good reason I'm not bitter now.
Okay.
But I wanted to get into some of your story.
Okay.
And just who you are as a person.
yeah.
Because I've never got a chance to do this. I mean, we cross at barbecues and things like
Sure.
that. And it's just like, oh, there's Auntie Stacy. And it's like, there she goes. She's gone again. Did you always find yourself being such a busy person as you are, like now?
Yes. I'm very busy. I'm kind of an A personality. I like to keep myself busy. When I was younger, like in my teenage years, I had a job. I worked. I paddled canoe. I went to school. I did a lot of things. So I've always been busy. I think that's more of my nature. I'm a dragon in the, zodiac, the Chinese zodiac. So.
And dragons are the hardworking overachievers.
Yes.
So you've always been an overachiever.
Yeah, sure. I think so.
And this is, I guess, a product of your upbringing. Where were you born and raised?
I actually was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, of all places. That's a fun fact that not many people would know about me. Both my parents are from here, and my father was Portuguese and my mother was Japanese. And back when I was born, which I won't have to tell you where it is when that was,
No.
but that wasn't very common in my. They sort of ran off together, and my dad joined the circus. Well, actually, it was a carnival, and he worked as a carny in Albuquerque, and then I came along, and my brother came along, and a few years later, when I was about 4, we moved back to Hawaii. So and thankfully times have changed, and my grandparents were very welcoming, and
yeah, I mean, and people don't understand that. Like, even me and my relationship now, a couple of decades ago, this was shameful.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't see too many interracial back then. As much.
And now it's kind of commonplace, and
Sure.
the world is a better place for it, I think.
I agree.
But back then, though, it was something to almost hide. When you were a kid, did you guys actually hide the fact that your parents were mixed?
You know, I think when I was a kid, there were more and more kids that were mixed. But I do think in my mom's family, she was the first person that didn't marry a Japanese guy. And so for her, it was extremely difficult. I think times were already changing, but in my mother's family, it was different.
Well, you know, your mom probably married a Portuguese man because of the conversation.
Yeah. My mom was outside the box. She was not your typical Japanese woman. So, yeah, I think that's why, too. And, you know, they were very much in love, and it was really sweet. I hear all these stories about their love story, and I think, wow, I never really saw that. They were just kind of my parents, you know. And after we came along, I think we blew the whole love story thing. They had to be mom and dad, and, you know.
But before, they were like a red-hot smoking couple.
Yes, ballroom dancing, and they taught all of her friends how to smoke cigarettes. I don't know how romantic that is, but, you know, it was the sign of the times.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then now, you know, you look back at those times now and you're going, God, those were so simple and happy.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a very happy family, it sounds like, right?
My family was interesting. My dad was a stubborn old Portuguese man, and my mother was a nurse, and so it was interesting. My dad was you know, tough to grow up with, but I think, you know, it was normal. We had a normal family. Neither one of my parents drank, you know. It was like just your typical childhood, but with a stubborn old Portuguese father.
Now, which parent, like, growing up? Because for me, I was kind of riding the coattails of my dad most of the time, and then, you know, I'd hang out with mom. For you growing up, which parent did you actually hang around and adopt most of the mannerisms that you have from?
That's an interesting question, because I actually hung out with my mother and loved my mom and hung out with her all the time. But when you ask what mannerisms I pick up, I definitely am my father. I am. And like it or not, that's why when I say he was tough to grow up with, I think, oh my God, my poor kids. But, you know, very driven. My father's also, I'm a dragon and I'm a Taurus. Ooh. And my father, yeah, I know. That's why I got horns all over there. And so driven.
Yeah.
But my father was also a Taurus. I was born the day before his birthday. And so we locked horns all the time. And so, you know, but I really identify with him, even though I didn't really want to be like him. We have a lot of the same kind of characteristics.
I am almost afraid to say it, but when it comes to father's mannerisms, those are genetic, and you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying.
Oh.
So I am who I am, and I can want to be soft and gentle like my mom was, and, you know, good-natured. Everybody that met my mother just loved her. She was so easygoing and kind, and she was a nurse. She was very compassionate, and anybody in crisis would come run to her. So those are things I think that I carry on in the work that I do. But so I'm really good in a crisis, like my mother was good. Anytime somebody's bleeding, you call my mom. She was on it and calm. And you have a health problem, call my mom. But, you know, as much as I wanted to be like her, you know, you can't really change who you are. And then I keep saying, oh, my God, I am more and more like my father every day.
Does that scare you?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Because it's still happening. I see my mother, too, you know, coming I can't hear as well as I did. Hearing loss and, like, runs in my family.
Well, actually, from what I've heard, if you come from a strong Portuguese family, hearing loss is actually a good thing.
It's a great thing, right?
Yeah. I you know, I hate to bring it up, but even when I'm around you and I talk a lot, I find it hard to get a word in edgewise from you.
I am, yes, that's true. I talk a lot. And I always say that, like when I do trainings and stuff, I tell people, if you have any questions, you better raise your hand because I will talk for this whole hour.
Yeah. And do they ever have difficulties sort of like, could you just hit the brakes, please?
Yeah.
Oh. But it's got to be real good for you because you come from a background that it seems that communication was very free-flowing in your house growing up.
Sure.
And when it comes to communicating with the public, a lot of us take our behaviors from how we saw our parents deal with the public.
Definitely.
Your dad, being a carny, must have made you a social butterfly at a very young age.
Yeah, and yes, I mean there was an article in the paper when I was 5 weeks old or something. I was sitting at the carnival with the Cupid dolls, 5 months old I think I was.
Wow.
They thought I was a boy. My name was Stacy, and back then I guess Stacy was more of a boy's name, and so in the paper it said he's the son of, so and so. It was kind of interesting, but yeah. And my father was also a car salesman.
Oh, wow.
So that's the personality, that very, outgoing, talk a lot, and I rely on that because I'm selling domestic violence a lot.
Not selling it, but so much as selling the awareness of it.
Yeah, and selling that people should care. And so that's what I mean by, like, I'm peddling it. And yeah.
Well, with the stubbornness and the communication, I'd imagine that you pretty much have to take those hand in hand every day with you.
Every day.
Ooh, God. What's the toughest room that you've ever had to break into?
I will tell you, we did a training for the Department of Public Safety. It was all of the correctional officers at the jail. It was the security guards at the police department, probation officers, parole officers, and we were at the hospital auditorium, and that's a very deep room. The seats go up high, and they all sat way up at the top. And so I think that was the toughest room that I've ever done.
And did you like sweat in your shoes like that bad?
I didn't sweat as much as we had a prosecutor that did some of the presentation too. I think he really caught the brunt of the sort of hostility in the room. And then by the time I'm coming up, I often tell my story of being a survivor of domestic violence. I think it softens the room. And I think we learned a lot that day that probably we should soften the room before we put the suit in front of that crowd.
Wow.
But by the time I started talking and I started telling my story, it changed the energy, which was good because they needed to lighten up a little bit.
Oh, well, talking about your story, let's get into a little of that. When you say that you had a history of domestic abuse, when did this start?
Actually, I met my ex-husband when I was 15, and I was paddling canoe down at I paddled for Nakaivalu, and he also paddled there, and I met him when I was 15. He was 19. And kind of troublesome. He drove a nice car. Back in the day, a Cutlass Supreme was a very shiny, special car.
Yeah, and today it is a land yacht.
Yeah, I know. But back in the day, it was a very special car. It was nice. And then he had a good job. He worked construction, money. He was done with school already. So I was kind of troubled. I was chasing this bad guy image. And so I found him.
Well, this is what gets me, especially being a father of a daughter.
Yeah.
What makes a good girl with a good dad from a good house chase a bad boy?
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know that it's anything in me necessarily that chased that I sort of got caught up in this romance thing with him. He was older. He was a very good looking guy, very suave and charming. And it wasn't the troubled side of him I was after, really. But he was just that dark and handsome kind of guy. And then I found out more about, the trouble part. But
yeah, and then that came a little later. How later did the troubled part come to bother?
Probably about 6 months into the relationship. We were going through McDonald's, and he punched me in my face. And, my ex-husband was a boxer, and that was really pretty much his thing. And aside from that one time that he punched me in the drive-thru, he never hit me in the face again. So, sometimes people think that men just snap and lose it, and really it's not about snapping and losing it. Because if he snaps and loses it, he would have punched me in my face more often. But really that was the only time. And so I ran to school and swore I wasn't going to talk to him again. And then after school, he didn't go to work, and he was very sad and very sorry. And then he shared a story about how he grew up and witnessed his grandfather beating his grandmother up. And his grandmother was this beautiful, saintly woman who took him in to help raise him. There were a lot of kids in his family, so he kind of was one of those lost kids, so his grandma took him in. And so she was really like his savior and angel. And then he saw her get beat up, and he really didn't want to grow up like that. And so I felt a lot of compassion for him. And so I decided that, I will work harder to be a better girlfriend and not make him mad so he won't beat me up anymore.
But that's usually the cycle that women get into, though. It's they seem to not only recognize that, oh, there's a story there, and try to do the broken healer thing.
Yeah.
But there's a part of them that makes them think that they're the ones in control of that. Why would you, being an individual, a smart, caring individual, think that your actions create actions in somebody else? Where do you make that jump?
Well, what's interesting is it's because we're told that. And as a society, and definitely in my relationship, I got the blame for the abuse. Let's use I talk too much, which I use a lot because I do, right? And so I would talk too much, and that would make him mad. And then tension would build in our relationship, and then he'd hit me. And he would say to me, you should have shut up. Like, I told you to shut up. You should just be quiet. But then on other days, he would tell me to answer him, and I'd be like, well, last time I answered him, I got punched in the face, or, choked my neck or whatever. And so I think this time I'll just be quiet and I won't answer it because maybe that's the right answer. And then I get beat up because I didn't answer him. So the rules kept changing on me, and that's what happens too. Like, he sets the rules and he changes the rules. But everybody sort of blames the victim, like, for staying in an abusive relationship. Once he hits you, you should know better and just get out of there. And even I babysat my niece one day, and she was 4 years old, and he came by and we were arguing. She ran off, and after he beat me up, she says to me, Auntie, why don't you shut up like he said to? He was telling you to shut up, and you just kept arguing with him. So even my 4-year-old niece knew that I should have just shut up, and so then it's my fault. And really, as a society, we do that. We blame the victim for, she should have just shut up, or she shouldn't have started a fight with him when he was drunk, or there's a lot of blame on victims.
And see, this is the part that intrigues me, because I'm going, being a logical person and thinking in things like cut and dry, black and white. If we had to assess blame in a situation like this, exactly how much blame does the victim deserve?
Well, that's an interesting question. People say that to me all the time, right? Like, isn't it 50-50? It doesn't take two to tango. Doesn't it take two to fight? And yes, it definitely takes two to fight. And it is 50-50, but I am 100% responsible for my 50%, right? And he is 100% responsible for his 50%. So I'm not responsible for him hitting me, but you know how it took a really long time for me to understand that. And I'm not responsible. I never made him hit me. And there really is, there's no excuse for violence, because, so we'll use like the extreme example that a lot of men use. Well, she was having an affair. Yeah. And so that's something that will piss people off and say, oh my God, then she deserves it, right? Or he, is justified. But the reality is that women have affairs and partners don't beat them up. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a cause for violence. It's a justification for men and women who are violent to use their violence. It's their justification. So I don't know that anybody can ever be responsible for someone else's behavior. It's decisions that they make. And really what the problem is it's not anger. Like, a lot of people think, oh, then just don't be angry. But you get to be angry. Anger is a very natural reaction to a lot of things, but you don't get to be violent. And so a lot of people get angry and don't get violent, Oh,
all the time.
I know, right? Me too.
Well, this is a question because, we're having such a very nice and logical, thought-out process here. But I imagine when you're going through all of this back then, you had none of this information
at all.
How long and by what ways did it take you to get informed about the situation that you were in?
Well, so I knew something wasn't right when I wasn't talking to my mom about it, when I was being secretive from my mother. And that's part of the dynamic of domestic violence. Domestic violence isn't just about the violence, it's about control. And so if I had known this was a visual show, I would have brought this power and control wheel and I could show you. But at the heart of domestic violence is power and control and the desire to get someone to do something or stop doing something. But then what's on the outside and what we all see is the violence, you know. And underneath the violence are all these different what we call tactics of abuse. And one of the tactics is isolation. So controlling where I would go, who I talk to, trying to cause trouble with like my mother so that I didn't want to go and talk to her or that she didn't want to talk to me. Keeping track of the mileage on my car. There were so many little things, and stalking me and following me around and showing up wherever I went. And so I started to feel like I was being followed.
Wow.
Yeah. So mental and emotional abuse is in there, psychological abuse, intimidation, threats, financial abuse. There's so many more things. But, so I knew something was wrong. And then after my son was born, he was about 6 weeks old. I went to the shelter for the first time. And they told me, you're not responsible for his violence. You can't make him hit you. And I kept saying, oh, no, but, it is my fault. I make trouble. I have a mouth on me. Like all the words that he would say about me, I would say.
So eventually his justifications became your own
exactly.
justifications.
It's like a brainwashing. And I bought into it. And I really believed that if I would just, if I would just clean the house better, if I would just not talk so much, if I would just not fight with him, if I would just make a better dinner, if I would just do this, then he wouldn't beat me up. But when I went to the shelter the first time, they told me that, and I didn't quite believe them. And so I thought, well, maybe that's true for you guys. And really, the reason I went to the shelter was I wanted them to teach me how to not make my husband beat me up.
Wow.
And a lot of women come to our shelter with that. They don't want the relationship to end. They just want the violence to stop. So I was the same way. Just teach me what to do so that I don't get beat up again. And that's when they were trying to tell me, well, it's not you. So that's part of what happens. You don't really, everything starts to come together. And even if someone had showed me that power and control wheel, it really wouldn't have waken me up.
No, I've seen the power and control wheel before, and I actually have a very good question about it, because there are so many levels after the surface level of what you see of the power, the abuse, and I guess you can say almost like the psychological conditioning. When you get below that, though, there's multiple motivations for these actions. And one thing is that looking at the wheel, and really I do wish that we had it here, but I really, really wish that we could, ask this question of it, okay? There's I think 8 different parts of the wheel.
Oh, very good, Shaggy.
Okay. Is it possible to only be a victim of one of those?
They actually all kind of tie in together, so it could be. I don't know that it's possible. So, do you have an example?
Let's take an example. Let's go the controlling. Okay, that's the little slice of the pie that you were talking about, where your isolation, trying to get them isolated from friends and family. You're monitoring where they're going, when they're going, how long they're staying there. Let's say you just have a really paranoid spouse.
Yes.
And they check on you constantly. However, they never branch off into the other things.
Okay, then.
Is that possible?
I guess it might be.
But not common.
Yeah, I don't think it's that common. I think they all play into each other. The way the power and control wheel was created was doing focus groups with lots and lots of women. There's the power and control. I don't know if it's big enough to, but...
Well, you know what? During the break, I'll see if I can get this up on our still store.
And we, so women from across the country got together and started talking about what did it look like. And then we found very common themes. So one is using the children. One is isolation. One is minimization, denial, and blame. And that's a really big one because, like many abusers, my ex-husband minimized his abuse. He used to say, well, if I really want to beat you up, look what I did to that guy. I broke his jaw in the ring last week, and that's with 16-ounce gloves on. Imagine if I hit you bare skin. And so I didn't really beat you up, because if I really beat you up, you would be in the hospital. And so I would be like, oh, that's true. And then, but him beating that guy up in the ring and breaking his jaw was a form of intimidation. It was an unspoken threat to me that said, look what I can do to this guy, even wearing 16-ounce gloves. So even before he had said that out loud, he was saying that to me without saying a word, by taking me to this sparring match and beating the crap out of this guy.
So it's safe to say that as a woman, when you're looking at a potential suitor, shall we say, or modern time hookup, if you are looking at one of those, the thing that you want to do is look at their outside behavior in everything first.
Sure. And also be aware that, like, a lot of these abusive guys want to rush things in. And so I'm always saying, be cautious and go slow into relationships. And I know that not all people that rush into relationships are abusive, but that's a red flag, something to pay attention to. Also, how is it that, I would say this to a heterosexual woman, I would say, how is it that he relates with his mom? How is it that he relates with his sisters, other women? Does he have friends? Or are you going to be the center of his universe? Because that's also a very common trait. Because not only was I isolated, my ex-husband was extremely isolated as well by his violence and behavior. So those are red flags. The lone wolf guys, they want to rush in and move in together, and they want to rush everything. So that's a red flag. And then when they start asking you to change your behaviors and who you are, how you dress, what you wear, who you talk to, whether or not you go to work, if they want you to not go to work or they want you not to go out with your friends, those are all red flags. We want to pay attention to those.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about the innocuous, because there is a stage in everybody's relationship where they are, let's just blow off work and stay together.
Oh,
today.
yeah, for sure. I get that
but
too.
And
that we just are together because it's so fun and great at the beginning, and we're just going to be together all the time. But then, really, then we all kind of get back to normal life, and we want to be with our friends and family too. Yeah. So.
You want somebody to talk smack about the person that you're dating with.
Yeah, because then eventually they're going to get on your nerves.
Exactly.
Because they do. Everybody does. It's Yeah,
but when you're in that stage, and we're coming up against a break, but real quickly, when you're in that stage and you're being isolated, are you aware of it?
Never, ever. It's interesting, because if we were, then we'll get out.
Wow.
If we start to realize that I am being stifled, and yet I will also say that sometimes, like, that violent behavior is easy, the violence, not just the controlling behavior, it's easy to sort of forgive, like, there's an isolated incident, it won't happen again. And then when it happens again, it's so shocking, and then so you think this time, but then they'll come back with I'm sorry again, and it's so easy to buy into that and believe them, especially if you're in love, and after a period of time you got a lot invested in that relationship.
Did you ever count the apologies?
No, there were many to begin with, but then after a while it kind of became like, well, you should have known better. I told you I don't like my food like this, or...
Wow.
Yeah.
So it basically goes from apologetic at first to this is expected behavior.
And you should know better, yeah. And so, how much time do we have? Because I can...
I think we've got about a minute left.
So what got me to leave was I realized that it didn't matter what I did. He would come home from work and pace outside. There's nothing wrong, but before he came in the house, he would pace and talk to himself and work himself up into this big rage. And I could hear him out there talking to himself, smoking cigarettes. The way he threw his cigarettes down, I knew that he's going to come inside and beat me up. And so I could see that was happening, and I was powerless to get out of there.
Wow. God. Well, I tell you what, now we do have to take the break. When we get back from it, though, I want to kind of wrap up this story, and let's talk about where we are now with women helping women.
Great.
Yeah, and all of the cool things that you've got there. All right. For everybody else, thanks for joining the show. If you would like to join us, 877-6363. That is the phone number. You're listening live on 88.5 FM and Channel 55 KAKU. We'll be back in just a couple of seconds with our guest today from Women Helping Women, Executive Director Stacy Moniz.
Thanks.
Did you know? These 6 major corporations control 90% of the media in North America. KAKU is public access TV, run by the people, for the people. KAKU is Maui County's agent of free speech and community media. Federal laws require cable companies to provide financial support for all public access programming. KAKU is your public access resource, and we're open 5 days a week. Community members can learn to use the equipment and tools needed to exercise their free speech. It's easy, too. Now you know.
At KAKU's Maui Community Television, we are committed to employing your access to media. Our goal is to certify community producers that will go out and create meaningful and local content for our viewing community. KAKU's Media Lab now offers classes in Apple Final Cut Pro 10, professional editing software. This class will cover basic editing skills and Final Cut Pro's 10 systems available at KAKU. With a maximum of 8 students to every instructor and 1 student per editing system, students will receive intimate and hands-on training.
We are back. Welcome to the show. If you're just joining us, I am sitting here today with Executive Director Stacy Moniz. I love the name Stacy Moniz, you know?
Thank you. I like it too. I should work on that.
I'm telling you.
Moniz. I'm going to change the pronunciation.
We could have a movement. But right before the break, we got into you were in an abusive relationship with your ex-husband. Mm-hmm. You knew that you were at that point. You have already had children. You went to the shelter.
Yes.
They have told you that his actions are not your fault. Mm-hmm. You have realized that subtle actions that he had outside of your relationship were actually power plays and threats to the relationship. So now here we are. We're a mother of 2 kids. And we have become, for the first time, self-aware of our situation. Mm-hmm. Where did this awareness come from first?
You know, I was the not best man. What is the woman, a maid of honor?
Maid of honor.
At my friend's wedding, my best friend's wedding. I was going to get beat up that night, no matter what I did, because I looked really beautiful. I had just had my daughter. She was 4 months old. No, she was littler than that. March, April, May. So she was 2 months old. Mm-hmm. And my best friend was in the Navy, and all of her wedding party were all Navy guys. So, you know, that created a lot of tension in my marriage. So, but I couldn't say no. And I was the maid of honor. And I went and I went to the wedding, and I remember sitting at the head table looking at my friend's weird cousin Lisa from the mainland dancing all by herself on the dance floor. And I thought to myself, I'm sitting here. I was 21 years old, and I have 2 kids, and I'm terrified to go home tonight because I know, and I can't, there are 200 people here. Half of them are in the military, and I can't tell a soul what's going on. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to get beat up. And I know that's going to happen. So I'm more like that crazy girl dancing by herself to Madonna. That really is who I am. And it dawned on me in that moment. But I didn't leave for 2 more months when I was getting beat up. I was holding my daughter and looking in this mirror that was on the wall, and I could see my son behind me, who wasn't even 2 years old yet, and he was watching the whole thing. And all of a sudden, that picture locked into my head, and I said, all right, that's it. I'm just going to put up with this for tonight, and I'm out of here tomorrow. So what happened was I played it cool. I acted normal. He went to work the next day. I took my kids to my mother's house. I borrowed my uncle's truck. I loaded everything in of his belongings into this truck, and I took it to his mother's house. And I knew that the second I pulled into her driveway, she was going to call him. Mm-hmm. And I had only this much time to get back to my house. I had barricaded up most of the doors in my house, just my front door, because as soon as I got home, I was running in and blocking that door. I knew I was on a time frame. I told her, listen, you can help me get this out nicely, or I'm just going to leave it in the street, which I ended up pretty much just leaving it in the street. She was trying to talk me into, be cool, and, you just had a fight. And I said, no, this is it. I'm done. And I went home and I waited, and minutes later he pulled up and started to try to beat his way into the house, and I called the police and they took him away, and I went and got a restraining order. And that began what would become 3 years of trying to get away from this man.
So it wasn't over when it was over.
Just because Stacy said so did not make it so. I fought like I can't even explain how hard women fight to get away from these guys. And I have to tell you, when people say, why don't you just leave? This is why. Because at this point, I was 75 times more likely to get killed right at that point. Once you make a decision that you're going to leave, that's when guys kill you. And so I didn't know that statistic at the time, but I can tell you I knew I was in danger. So I went back to the shelter for the second time, because I wasn't safe at my mom's. He knew where my mom lived. He knew where I lived. It was very hard to run away on an island. So I went back to the shelter again. And then, I went to court. I'd call the police. I would report him violating the restraining order. And at that time, there weren't very many laws to protect victims of domestic violence. So the cool thing about having done this work for 28 years is that I get to see, how Martin Luther King talks about that long arc of time leads towards justice. I've gotten to help change laws and create laws that would have protected me had they been there when I went through all of this. But at the time, they didn't exist. So I ran, I moved again, I ran, I hid, I moved again. I still got beat up. Every time my restraining order would expire, he'd find me, beat me up. I'd have to go get another restraining order, but I did that. I filed for divorce. I fought him for months and months for custody, visitation. I was constantly in court. It felt like a full-time job just to protect myself and my kids. And then finally, there was a period of time where he escalated his behavior. He started to do a new drug in town, which was crystal methamphetamines, and he got really scary at that point. And if he hadn't been scary before, I would pull up to drop off my kids for visitation, and he would beat my car up. He would, he would be hiding. I'd drop the kids off with his mother, and he would follow me to my house on Thanksgiving and on Christmas. Supposed to be spending time with his kids, but he was spending time trying to find out where I lived. And he would find me and break into my house and beat me up and all kinds of things. So it was a very volatile, dangerous time. And so I ended up moving to the mainland. And I lived there for 2 years. And the difference it made for me to leave everybody and everything I knew and run off. I was about 25 years old. And I had a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. And bless their hearts, my kids were troopers. They were amazing kids. And we moved, and, it was so empowering for me. If I can do that, I can deal with this guy when I get back. And I had already been working at Women Helping Women. I'd been learning about, even though I was still getting beat up, I knew what was going on, and, I knew all the right things to do, but it didn't change his behavior. And again, it just kind of reinforces that there's nothing I can do to change his behavior. So,
now, you're in the mainland at this point. You've been away from here for, you said, 2 years. What made you come back?
Well, I had applied for a job up there, and it kind of was like this. If I don't get that job, then it's a sign. And I had not let my kids call their dad for almost that whole 2 years. I had let them call on my son's birthday one year, and I told him, listen, if you try to ask the kids where we are or anything like that, I'm going to hang up the phone on you, so don't do it. Just wish your son a happy birthday and let's, like, move on and enjoy your time on the phone. And the first thing he did was start to menace my son and say he's going to find us, and so I hung up the phone, and that was the last time he talked to him. So I started to call again because I wanted to come home, and I missed my family. I missed everything about Maui, and so I called him one day, my kid's dad, and I said, I'm thinking about coming home. What do you think? And he had spent a year in jail for threatening and violating restraining orders with my parents, and so something shifted for him too. And he was so excited that I had called. He wanted to see his kids so bad. I had agreed to send him a package of pictures and what the kids are up to. And so we started slowly talking about coming back. And so I didn't get the job. I was trying to be a correctional officer in Salem, Oregon.
Why?
I don't know. It was a good paying job. I don't know. But I didn't get it. Thank you. And so I came home. And things were very different because I was very different. I was no longer a victim. He could have beat me up if he wanted to, but I wasn't going to stand for it. And so I was a whole different person when I came home. And that's what makes the difference. And that's why I believe so much in women helping women.
And now you're back on Maui. How did you get linked up with this job with Women Helping Women?
I actually got the job before I came home. I worked for a program called Alternatives to Violence. Before I came home, I called this other woman that I used to work with. They had started a new program called Alternatives to Violence. And I called and I said, hey, I'm thinking about moving home. And they're like, oh, my God, we would love to have you work for us. And so I had a job before I even got home.
Wow.
So that was one of the factors. Like, everything led me back home, and all my support system was here. Everything was here. And I knew that I was a very different woman than I was when I left.
Yeah, you had left here, I say, an abused woman, and came back a force of nature.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I wouldn't have known it at the time, but it was building. It was building, and I became like a cyclone. It's true. It just sort of built up the storm.
Yeah, and now you're, let's say you get the job at Women Helping Women, and over the years, what are some of the things through that organization that you've done? You mentioned laws that you've had changed.
Yeah.
What are some of those?
Oh, it's so exciting. So we have now a mandatory arrest policy, and I helped work on that one, which says that if a victim of domestic violence has a physical injury or a complaint of pain, that the police shall arrest. So it changes the law to say that the police, they have to do something. That they can't just go away. We also created a system here where the prosecutor's office and all of the family court cases stay in the same courthouse, because part of the reason my ex got away with things was it happened in Makawao district, it happened in Paia district, it happened in Kahului, and we had district courts. So the same judges wouldn't hear the same story. Now anything like that gets heard in family court. So it's, everything's there, and the same judges see you again and again. So that was one thing that we changed. Also, the mandatory arrest is based on the fact that we understand that domestic violence is one of the most repeated offenses, that it's most likely to happen again and again. So that's why the arrest is intended to stop that. It's a misdemeanor. It's the only misdemeanor that has a mandatory arrest on it. So it's really a good thing. I've also helped create stalking laws, strangulation laws. If you strangle someone while you're beating them up, you'll be charged with a felony.
Wow.
Yeah.
And before it was just a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
And the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony is how much they can be prosecuted, correct?
Right, and how long they could go to jail.
Yeah, because misdemeanors, typically, those are the ones that we just kind of poo-poo, misdemeanor.
It's an assault, or but domestic violence it's called abuse of a family or household member, and it carries a much greater penalty, including a mandatory arrest, including mandatory sentencing. If you're convicted of abuse, you will go to jail for a minimum of 2 days.
Oh, well, see, this is great, because now you've came back an empowered woman. You've helped make laws that empower other women, and from what I hear, you throw a pretty good party.
I do. I'm a pretty good cook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to one of your parties.
Yeah. Is that the one where we were doing Mary Kay facials and you had all this stuff on your face? I think I have a picture on Facebook I could tag you in.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you do, but let's not. Okay? Let's remember, at the end of the day, I still need my dignity. What little there is left after 20 years of this career.
Sure.
But the parties that I'm talking about are the teas that you do.
Oh my gosh.
The
yes.
annual teas.
Uh-huh.
And this is a point of the story that I've been waiting for so long. I was so happy when I first moved here to find out about Women Helping Women and the
Nice.
teas and stuff.
Nice.
And of course, you know, my wife volunteers every
Since
year.
the beginning of, they were 7th grade or something when they first started volunteering at our events.
So every year that I've dated her, I always knew, oh, I'm going to the tea. Oh, okay, have fun. And then finally I was like, can I go?
Yeah.
So I started volunteering too.
Exactly.
When you took over as Women Helping Women, I'm imagining that a lot of this stuff that we see now, and kind of, dare I say, take for granted, wasn't there at the beginning, was it?
Sure. No, it's true.
And
Things change.
How long did it take you to get in there and say, you know what, guys, this is all really good at what we got going on here, but let's throw a party, and while we're throwing this party, create some public awareness.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. They come there and they're very well decorated. They're
Yeah.
themed. The catering is always awesome.
Yeah.
The locations are very beautiful. But the whole time you're there, it's an educational process.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
how many people have you worked with on like the average yearly tea?
I would guess we have at least 50 volunteers at every tea. And then now we've got the table designers. So each of the tables are designed by these incredible wedding planners or florists or just brilliant people who have so much talent. I can't even believe it. And so those two, that's another, 25 people. So it takes a village to put an event like that together, let me tell you.
And you have definitely organized a whole village, it seems, with all of this.
I'm sort of the ringmaster, but really I don't know every part that's going on.
Well, this is something else too, because remember at the beginning of the show I said, well, I do have a little bit of bitterness. Okay?
Yeah.
Here's the bitterness, and this is the funny story I wanted to tell you.
I've been
wanted to tell you for
holding
years.
my breath. Okay, go.
All right.
So you wait till we're on public television. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is hilarious. So
Oh,
this
okay,
is how I knew that you were a very intelligent woman. Okay? Now, most of the time, guys, we always run around with this idea that we are the smarter of the genders. I know,
We let you think that. It's good.
it's a curse. But I went to one of your teas, and I was thinking, God, this is such a great event. Now, of course, at that time, I'm a radio host, and radio hosts, our entire existence is how many places can I put myself in front of?
Sure.
And I really liked the calls, and I liked Women Helping Women. I was like, I want to host one of these. I want to host one of these bad. And I tried every way that I could to find out how to host one of these. So I followed my wife to one. I was like, I'm going to volunteer. I want to find out why I can never get a gig hosting one of these. And that's where I met Dean Wong. And at the moment that I saw Dean come out and start his emceeing of your event, I'm like, you know what? She would be a moron to hire me. This guy is phenomenal. And I've never doubted your intelligence since then because you were not stupid enough to hire me.
Yeah, well, no, and it's not like that. Dean was my board president, and he actually made his mark at our event years ago. Like, that's where he was found, and I was his agent at first. Like, he'd have to ask me permission if he could go do another event. I'd be like, well, as long as it doesn't conflict with our event, and then he's become a super mega star since then, and he hosts like every event.
Anytime that I think I'm a good host, I think of Dean and how he dresses when he hosts stuff, and then I realize that I am a joke.
Oh, no. Not everybody's going to be a Dean Wong, and, you've made your niche for sure.
Well,
when we have a country western, we need the twang and the accent. Sorry, I'm beating up your set here. You will have found your opportunity to host our event. You never know. We had talked at one point about having a cowboy-themed event up like in a pasture up country. In a barn. I guess it was this giant incredible barn.
But a lot of the people that as your role as executive director that you do want to entice to come out are corporate sponsors and things like
Sure.
that. Guys that actually have some good money
Yeah.
that they want to send to good causes.
Yes.
These are typically not the people that like walking around in cow patties.
And that was really our thing. That's what we realized that might not be that might not be as good an idea as it sounds like.
Yeah.
We're gonna do cow pie bingo, like score out the pasture and let the cows out. It's such a fun idea. Somebody should do it, but it couldn't be us because our women come in their high heels and in their very pretty dresses, and even the men are. You see Dean, he's flashier than just got this clothes. You're not going to wear that in a pasture. It's
Well,
true.
I would
It's true.
think that an organization that spends as much time as yours fighting bull crap, you wouldn't exactly want to sleep in it that night,
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to go dwell along all the
Uh-huh.
stuff you just dealt with in your
Yeah.
job. But, I mean, you meeting people like this at these teas,
Yes.
these are not only amazing network opportunities for your organization,
Absolutely.
but I notice that a lot of the times the volunteers are people that have come through your program.
Yes, isn't that great?
It
So are
seems-
my staff.
I know.
So am I. I'm the executive director. Who would have thought?
It's hilarious because you're not one of these people that's like, okay, it's mandatory that you all show up here and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no.
There's no edicts from on high.
Oh, no. You can't do that when you run a nonprofit. You got to, if you want to come, you come and volunteer and have a good time and eat some good food and have a lot of fun. And I think it's a fun event. And so even though we stress out, there's a period of time where it's very stressful, and then there's a period of time where we all are having fun. So I think that we try to make it fun for all the volunteers,
And the
including my staff.
The volunteers that come through, though, like I said, these are people that have went through your program, that have been with you for years at some point.
Yeah.
When you're in your position, in your daily job, and this is a kind of a hard question here to ask, but does it ever get easier to deal with knowing what the nature of your job is?
That's a really good question. The nature of the job is really ugly. It's not. We hear people's stories of awful, awful abuse, and some of it affects their kids in big and small ways, and it's hard to hear. It really is. And yet, at the same time, there's these stories of huge triumph and I look at my family as a really good example of what can happen when you leave an abusive relationship and try to work on yourself a little bit. And, we're not perfect. My family's not perfect. But, both my kids, against tremendous odds, both of them went to college. This is an amazing story to me that could happen. And I see it happen all the time. So we tend to focus, the staff that make it and can last a long time, and the volunteers that can last a long time. One of those rejuvenative factors is that we focus more on those success stories and hold out that hope for everyone. And that it doesn't matter how many times you need to come to the shelter, we're going to be here for you. It doesn't matter how many times you call the hotline or how many restraining orders you need to get or how many times you come to our support groups. We are going to be there for you. And we're going to offer you whatever we can. And we have so much more to offer now than we ever did when I first came through this program. So that's the piece that we focus on, is all these incredible positive changes that we've made and that these women make, because I've made for my own personal life. Just like I said, nobody can change another person. Mm-hmm. We certainly can't change or rescue anybody. We just provide the safe space for them to make their own change. And that's what happens every day. And sometimes women come back and sometimes they're hurt again, and we're still there to be there as a support and a safe space for her to make her decisions about what's going to happen next. And
have you ever found yourself, and I do hear all the time, it is work
Sure.
at the end of the day that we do. Have you ever found yourself particularly just frustrated with somebody and it's like, look, I'm going to break character a little bit. Look me in the eyes. You see that look in your eyes, I've had it. Have you ever had to take somebody like to that level?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Is that easy?
No, and sometimes the more someone resembles me, and whatever that means, not physically, but maybe they've got 2 kids, or they're the same age, or they've got like those same eyes that I feel like I'm looking at myself, then it gets harder. Because I really want to say, gosh, in my head I'm thinking, I wish I had the perfect set of words to say to you what I needed to hear, but I didn't even know what I needed to hear. And I come back to, it's your journey, it's your process, and you're gonna figure it out when you figure it out. Everyone always asks me, what's the perfect thing to say to a victim of domestic violence to help her realize what she needs to do to get out of there? And I say it's infinite. There are as many women as there are, there's that many answers. I wish I had that nugget of, here's what you say. And I don't have that. So I always just say, have them call us and talk to us on the phone, because it makes a difference just to talk to someone, break the isolation. Everything we do is confidential, absolutely confidential. So we work with a lot of people, even men. We do have men in our programs as well.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. If somebody is going through a tough time and has been watching this program and stuff, what number would they call for one of these?
Our hotline number is 579-9581, and that's the number to get resources to get into the shelter. It's a hotline. It's 24 hours a day. Someone will answer that phone 24/7. So whatever it is you need, whether it's the shelter, whether it's a restraining order, we have an office in Lahaina, we have an office on Lanai. Maybe you need help with rental assistance. We have help. All of our programs are centered around victims of domestic violence. So if you're a victim of domestic violence and maybe you don't want to leave your relationship yet, you don't have to. Just call us and talk it out. We want a safety plan. We want to strategize. If you're going to leave, what should you take? And if you want your partner to leave, what can you do? Can you get a restraining order? Is that something that would work for you? Is that something that will work in your relationship? We just talk it through, because there's infinite options depending on what's going on.
God. And I mean, what's the number once again? Just
579-9581.
Okay. So if you are experiencing problems 24 hours a day, you can call that number.
Absolutely.
Now, we know, because it's like, oh God, it's almost 3 minutes till the end of the show here. And
Time flies, especially when you're Portuguese.
This is why I wanted you on the show. I was like, Portuguese father?
Yes.
All right. This is the part of the show that I have been waiting for, because we here at KAKU knew that Women Helping Women was in need of something.
Yes.
And we actually have one.
Oh, my God.
Beneath the desk today, ta-da! I present to you from KAKU Media.
Oh, my God.
This is our very own. I'll go ahead and put it here in the camera.
I know.
We are donating this iMac to you for use, and it's got video stuff and everything on it. I know. So this is something that
shopping. Somebody said.
I know Chivo come in here and he was like, "You go shopping on them." I'm like, Chivo, not everybody's you, buddy. But this iMac will be leaving here today with you.
I'm so excited.
And we're happy to give it to you. And anytime that you guys need stuff like public awareness, something, please feel free, come by.
Oh, we'll love it. Yes. Okay. We've done that. And we need to do that more. It's just so hard. Our staff's so small. But anyway, yeah, we would love to. We need to do more like public television, public service announcements. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Stacy, thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, my God. Thank you for having me, Shaggy.
All right. Well, for everybody else, we'll get to say goodbye at this time. Tomorrow on the show, Michael McCartney is coming back. God knows why. But he will be here from 5 until 6. If you want to catch a replay of this show tonight at 11 o'clock on Channel 55, do join us, okay? And Stacy, before we leave, is there anything that you'd like to say, like, any shout-outs, any congratulations?
I want to say happy birthday to my grandson, Isaac La'akea Callahan, and happy birthday to my daughter, Haley.
Oh, okay.
Moms need to get more props for our birthdays. We were working hard that day. Let me tell you, Haley worked hard that night. She did.
Oh, I remember this story. I have heard Vietnam veterans with less traumatizing stories than his birth.
Yeah,
But he's a cute kid.
Oh, my God, he's so cute.
Oh,
yeah.
But he's 2 today, so.
He's 2.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Any plans tonight, Grandma?
Yeah, we're going to have some serpicos up country.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Don't come stalking me there.
Please don't. Please don't. But once again, the number to call if you have any questions for Women Helping Women?
579-9581.
Okay.
It's our hotline.
Oh, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You've got to come in again soon.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to.
And tell Dean I am still just a little jealous.
You got something to live up to. You can watch videos. It's sort of like, game prep. You watch the videos. What do I do so I could work on that? And, get a new wardrobe.
Definitely.
I'm going to plug our boutique, Revive Boutique at the Old Kahului Shopping Center. We have wardrobe there.
Yeah.
You could come and get some sharp
Or you can
duds.
donate.
You can donate to our, absolutely. All of it goes to proceeds go to Women
Helping Women.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks again.
That's going to do it for us. Remember, tonight at 11 o'clock, you can catch the replay. And tomorrow, 5 o'clock, join me for Michael McCartney. God help us all. Until then, though, we've got to go. So until tomorrow, aloha. And for our listening audience on 88.5, why not? We'll get into